Welcome to Mixing for Beginners. I'm Matt. This is a video in a series of videos talking about mixing lead vocals. We first started by editing the lead vocal track, and then we added pitch correction, then we EQ'd it, then compressed it, and now we are moving on to time-based effects. It'll be reverb in this episode. So the first thing I want to talk about is why we use reverb. So I'm sure that most people know, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page, humans are used to hearing things in a space with walls. So it sounds odd to us when there is no reflection whatsoever. Like if you're in a vocal booth or in a studio that's been treated really well, to talk or sing in that space, it sounds very bizarre to us. So because of that, we want to hear our music in a space as well. Now, sometimes we do use no reverb. It's usually in a special application if we want to hear something. If we want to hear something sound more present, or like right up in your grill, right there in front of you, then sometimes we would use no reverb. Oftentimes it's not no reverb. Oftentimes it's very, very light reverb. But most of the time we're going to hear something in a space that we can kind of identify. And yeah, so what I want to do is go through Ableton's reverb first, and then talk about how we can sort of apply reverb in general in Ableton, because there's a few different ways, which is pretty cool. And then I'm going to show you one of my favorite plugins, a reverb unit, at the end. So first thing is, let's go to the track that we have already processed, and let's add the Ableton reverb. So up here on the in the left-hand menu, you have audio effects. Under reverb and resonance, grab the verb and just drop it here on the track. All right, so let's look at some of these parameters, and then I'll show you how it sounds. Now, a lot of these things, as I've said before, I really love Ableton because it's easy enough for a beginner to feel comfortable in pretty short amount of time in the software. But it does allow you to do a lot of advanced stuff. So if you're an expert level using Ableton, it's not going to slow you down. Well, the same thing is it's the same thing with the plugins that Ableton offers as well. And this reverb has a lot of flexibility, but we won't go through everything here. There's some global parameters along the bottom and along the side. And then some of these in the middle here, or the top and the middle here, we're not going to use, but I am going to tell you what they are. So the first thing, what happens is, as the sound goes through, it hits this input filter first, and this gives us a high and low pass. And so how we would use this is, say we want like a darker sounding reverb, we could choose high cut and say that everything over a certain amount of hertz or kilohertz will not hit the reverb. And so we're not going to hear the high frequencies hitting the reverb, which makes it sort of a darker sound. And if we want a little bit of a brighter sound, we can actually hit the low cut here and say we don't want everything below a certain hertz, 630 hertz in this case. We don't want to hear that hit the reverb. And you can actually put both on here too for different effects. But how you just change it is select it on or off, and then you can just drag this dot around. But we're going to turn that off. Early reflections refers to it's the earliest echoes that you hear before you hear the washy tail, and it modulates it a bit. You can choose spin on or off, and then there's a mountain rate and a different type of shape. I'm not going to go into the details there, but I'm just gonna turn it off. But that's what this refers to, is those first echoes before the tail. Diffusion network is affecting the tail, so the wash, and different parameters around that, which we're not going to talk about. And then chorus adds a modulation, like you've heard chorus sound on a guitar or voice before, so it adds that to the reverb. But we're not going to worry about that. Now, before I get into let's do the global stuff. But here we're going to start from a preset. So if you hit this little button right here, you get the ability to choose one of Ableton's many presets. And this is a good place to start. So you'll see it opened reverb here, and you can unfurl like hall or room or space or special. Let's just choose a big one, a cathedral. And just if we double click on it, you'll see cathedral shows up. It changes the parameters in the reverb unit, and you can see it identifies as cathedral here. So yeah, and it also, you can see, added a high cut, added some diffusion, etc., and also gave us some parameter changes down here, which we'll talk about. Here is what the Cathedral preset sounds like with no adjustments. Okay, so that's a lot. So the first thing that we can do is choose, using this dry wet dial here, choose how much of the sound we want to hear is dry and how much we want affected by reverb. And so if we turn we'll just start turning it down and you'll start to hear a difference here.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract. The dual colors see the truth and then filter it. And now your mind's eye is bruised like a...
All right, so that's a lot more reasonable. What we're looking for is we want to hear what the vocalist is saying. So it should sound, we should be able to clearly identify what the lyrics are. And so what I want is to make sure that I hear that clearly, but then also hear a good amount of the space as well. And I think this 17% is a pretty good range for that.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract. The dual
maybe even lower, maybe around 13. But it still doesn't sound right to me. It still sounds like there's a lot going on. And that gets into these other parameters. So the first parameter we'll look at is pre-delay. And what pre-delay is, it's how long it takes the source to hit a wall and come back to you. So imagine me standing in a room, I am talking, you'll know how far away the end of the room is from you based on the pre-delay. So 60, and this is in milliseconds, that's what MS is. But 60 milliseconds is quite unreasonable. That's a long distance away from me and the wall. So what normally happens is somewhere between, say, 10 and 25. So let's actually turn this to 15.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract.
And what that does is it shortens the time that we hear that first slap back, and it makes a lot more sense this way.
You wear the flag on your dress like a
so here it is all the way up again.
The dual colors see the truth and
it just takes so long to develop that it's almost like it's just way too long. It's almost like we've forgotten that it happened. And by the time the reverb comes back to us, I'm onto a different word. So we really want this lower.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract. The dual colors see the truth and then filter.
That's a lot better. The second parameter over here is size, and this is the size in volume of the space. So we can actually make this space a lot smaller too by here.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract. The dual colors see the truth and then filter it.
And then decay is how long the washiness, the tail of the reverb will stay audible before it dissipates and goes away. And so if by bringing the decay down,
you wear the flag on your dress like a cataract.
A lot shorter, right?
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract.
A lot longer. And so if you're going to have a big reverb with a ton of decay in a big size room, you're going to have to bring it down in the mix using your dry wet, or you're not going to be able to understand what the singer's saying. So let me show you some of the flexibility here. And remember too, we're using one preset. So this is like one type of reverb sound, but we get a ton of flexibility with it. And it sounds pretty good. So we're just gonna stay on Cathedral here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring the pre-delay way, way down. We'll bring the dry wet up a bit. We're gonna bring the decay pretty far down, and then the size of the room down too. And let's just hear what this sounds.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract. The dual colors see the truth and then filter it. And now your mind's eye is bruised like a pugilist. You evangelize in line with the saberist.
That sounds like a lot of slapback, but no tail, right? Which it sounds more like a delay at this point than it does a reverb, because we're getting a slapback.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract. The dual colors see the truth and then filter it. And now your mind's eye is bruised like a pugilist. You evangelize in line with the saberist.
Sounds more 80s to me. Like I was thinking in preparing for this video, it's more like still rock and roll to me. That Billy Joel song. It kind of has that feel to it. Now, just to demonstrate how what big a difference pre-delay can have, it's a lot more apparent when we make the room smaller. So here's what happens when I turn the pre-delay way up.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract. The dual colors see the truth.
See how long it takes for us to hear that echo? That's all pre-delay. So that's pretty much it. There's just a lot of flexibility with the reverb that comes with Ableton, and you can just dial it in to your heart's content. But just the name of the game really is you want to make sure that you can hear whatever. If it's important enough to be in your mix, then you want to make sure you can hear it clearly enough. And then the rest is taste, really. But this is a good one. So the next thing I want to show you, though, is we can apply reverb in a couple different ways in Ableton. Directly on the track is how what we just did, right? What I just showed you. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. But we can also apply it up here as a return. And I like to do it from this view. Remember, hit tab and we get back here. By right-clicking, you can just hit insert return track. And we're just going to call this Vox Verb. My mic's in the way of typing a little bit, but I got it. And now let's just add this cathedral right here to this return track. And how a return works is, I'm just going to go to the track we're working on here, and I've got this verb off now. We're going to send it using these dials here, and C is Vox Verb here, you can see. Use these dials to say how much of the signal we are going to send to that return, to that reverb. And
you wear the flag on your dress like a cataract. The dual colors see the truth and then filter it.
We start to hear it right about here. And so this is a percentage of the dry signal. We're sending it to that return before it goes out to the master, and the rest is dry. So you can apply it this way. And this is very common for people who are mixing. And there's a few reasons why. And the first thing is it can save your CPU a bit, because what you can do is you can send a bunch of different tracks to the same instance of the reverb. So I can send all my vocal tracks. I can even send the group right here of vocal tracks all to the same reverb. And so if you're applying reverb to every single one of your tracks, well, then there's more and more instances of the reverb, and that can really slow down your computer. So to save space, that's one reason. Or another reason is you're just going to treat a bunch of different things the same way. Like, say you have a verb that you put on your kit, and like I don't know, something else, same kit, you want your kit and your keyboards in the same space. You can just all treat them the same way by putting it on a return track and just sending it to the same reverb. So that's a great way to do it. But the reason why I used to do that all the time, but the reason why I don't tend to do that is because Ableton just offers us some really cool features that not every other DAW does. And it's this grouping function. It's the same thing. If you didn't watch my EQ video, I talk about it there, where you can take your effects and you can group them together and then create a rack out of it. So we're going to do the same thing again using this reverb. And I know you would think of groups as more than one effect normally, but you can do it. You can group something. You can group one effect. So we're just going to do that by hitting Command G. And it creates this group. And now down here, we can open up the rack. So creating the group gives us a rack. And what it's telling us is everything before the reverb is going through this rack and then hitting the reverb. Okay. So, but we can also duplicate this rack so that everything before, and we're just going to call the top one, we'll just call this verb. And then we can just call this dry. And now in this dry rack, I can delete the reverb. And so now I have a complete rack of everything that we had preceding the reverb and no reverb, and everything preceding adding reverb. And then we can decide our mix between dry and wet signal. So I can bring the reverb down, say like -10, and here's what it sounds.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract.
I can give it more.
The dual colors see the truth and then filter it.
A lot less.
And now your mind's eye is bruised like a pugilist. You evangelize and
I like this around 10. So it gives us another kind of dry wet knob here. You can think of it that way, but there's more. So say I wanted to create like a third, and I would just duplicate this by hitting Command D. We're just going to change this to verb right. And we're going to change this one to verb left. And now I'll take the verb here. I'm just going to copy it, which is just Apple C, and then drop it, Control V or Command V right there. And now here is the, let's bring the volume down. This is the panning right here. So say we can put this to the left. by 50 and to the right by 50. And now we have reverb.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract.
I don't know if this comes out mono in the recording or not, but here it is on the left only. Here it is on the right only. And now right and left. And now all three. And so we can keep that dry signal right in the center so that the lyrics and the melody are nice and present, nice and forward so everybody can understand. But put verb left and right, panned pretty hard so we get that nice, and actually by doing this, we can actually bring, I think, the reverb up a bit, and it won't be in the way, and it'll still sound nice and lush.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract. The dual colors see the truth and then filter it. And now your mind's eye.
I might even bring the dry wet up on both of these as well. 31, I think.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract.
Kind of the best of both worlds there. Let me bring that actually down a little bit.
You wear the flag on your dress.
Yeah, can totally hear it, and I get some nice verb on either side of that. Now, so oftentimes I'll create a group, and I'll use this with all my time-based effects. So I would add verb here, maybe left and right, and I would add my delay here, maybe even delays left and right, although a lot of times you can use delay units that will ping pong for you, so I don't even have to do that, or chorus or flange or any of that, any type of time-based effect I would use I would add to this rack right here, and then you can pan them all over the place, create different mix the volumes, decide how much dry signal you want, all from this nice little rack right here. So that's the reason why I really like using the reverb, right directly on the track like this. But if if your CPU can't handle it, then it might be a little bit more difficult for you. Last thing I want to show you is, actually, we'll just go back using the same one. I'm just going to turn okay, yeah, that's off. And bloop. Show you, so one of the plugins that I really, really like is Valhalla's Vintage Verb, and so many people use this thing. I've seen this all over the internet. People love this. Love this reverb. So number one, it has a beautiful looking interface. Number two, it's super easy to use. And number three, the fidelity is great, particularly for how much this thing costs. I can't remember exactly, but it's, I don't know, like $50 or something. But I think it just sounds great, and you can kind of out of the box just put it on there, adjust your mix a bit, and then it sounds great.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract. The dual colors see the truth and then filter it. And now your mind's eye is bruised like a pugilist. You evangelize in line with the saber.
I mean, that already sounds pretty awesome, and this is just the preset that came up, Concert Hall. But your pre-delay is here. Mix knob, you saw me affecting there. Decay knob is right here. I'm not going to go through this stuff, but EQ, the high cut and the low cut are right here. So you could say you want a darker sound, you can bring down the high cut.
You wear the flag on your dress like a cataract. The dual colors see the truth and then filter it.
It's a little bit darker. Might bring some of the low cut.
You wear the flag on your dress like...
I mean, that sounds pretty good. Then you can choose from a bunch of different presets here under mode. Same thing in presets here. Different types of chambers and halls and things. And then you can also choose the color, which is it's several decades. So basically 70s, 80s, and now. I tend to use 70s and 80s. Depending on the style of music I'm doing, I'll use 70s and 80s. If it's more electronic music, I'll do 80s. And anything that's got like more acoustic guitar and like a more like rock feel, I'll use the 70s. But
you
the
wear the
sounds
flag on your dress like a cataract.
Pretty great, I would say. But that's it. So I think at this point you have a pretty good understanding of how to use Verb. A lot of it is taste. But yeah, I'm gonna do one more video on delay and how to apply that to your vocals. And see you next time. Thanks.
Agent. You pegged to the dollar, you're